Good evening, folks, and welcome to FMA Discussion. This is episode 479, and tonight we're going to be talking with Andrew Hampton. We'll initially get his FMA background, but then we're going to be segue into prisons. Not just prisons, but he's also worked for a bunch of other law enforcement agencies, so we're going to find out how he took all that experience and how it's helped him into what he's currently and presently doing, which is a CO officer, if I'm not mistaken. But I think he's also on a couple other task forces, which we'll find out. So if you're watching, tell us where you're watching from, smash that like button, and we're just getting started. Here we go. Hey, how are you?
How you doing, sir?
Good. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh my gosh. Oh no, when you started laying down some of that information, it was a must. So so before we get into the meat and potatoes, if you will, let's get some of your your FMA background. So since it is FMA discussion, I guess we have to touch on that,
right? So I'm one of these few cases that you're going to have on this show who doesn't have that extensive background and knowledge.
Okay.
I actually stumbled into FMA on accident through police training and meeting Jared Wahongi here in Salt Lake. In 2021, I found an ad for his Tricon Fundamentals course, signed up for that, came in here and had the opportunity to talk with him and a couple of the other students that train here in Salt Lake, and discovered this thing called Bikini Tertia Kali. Came in, took a couple lessons, and instantly fell in love. The speed of it, the beauty, it kind of hit me in a way that other martial arts that I've trained previously hadn't. And then having that immediate applicability. So with that, I've been able to use this association, and I've trained with Arnold and a couple other instructors out there. And well, speaking of instructors and people, oh my God. Gotta give him a bro hug there.
I'll get you at the actual gym or facility? Where are you at?
I am here now. Oh my God.
I didn't know any better. With the picture on the back wall, it looked kind of hotelish like.
Oh no, this is one of the administrative offices. We've been going through. Okay. Yeah. So continuing with the conversation and how that works. So yeah, 3 years ago, I stumble into this and fall in love with this art. And I'm able to train with other people and outside influences, training in Atlanta. I hit Florida, and then having all of the other instructors that come around here. And it's been an interesting journey in 3 years, where kind of stumbling in off the street to kind of being a good force here and having quite a bit of say in building our classes here in the Salt Lake facility, working up through my instructorship under Tuhan Jared has been an interesting journey as well, because I am much harder on myself than the grading process is.
Okay. Then,
but
I got a call. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about this. Somebody's trying to call me on Facebook Messenger, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, so it should end like soon. Let me just send him a message. Sorry, on interview. All right, I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good.
That's the first. So pre bikini, pre FMA, like what were you like? I know you touched upon it during the test run. You were doing some MMA. Like, is that kind of like what you guys what you were doing as far as before getting exposed to FMA?
Yeah, that's what you could call it, MMA. I kind of gave you the rundown as a kid that I, always had Hong Kong Phooey, the Ninja Turtles, the action flicks of the mid 90s and early 2000s. And then I never really had the opportunity to train. My hometown in Alabama had like 2 martial arts schools that were karate. and life choices also. I led a very sedentary life for a little while. But when I moved out here, I had a music studio, and one of the guys I was recording towards the end of that started training me in boxing and jiu-jitsu, and got me to a level that I felt like, you know what, I can stumble into the amateur mixed martial arts world.
Okay.
And that's the same time I decided to try to get into law enforcement, and having never really tested that metal, I used a local promotion to get in there in an environment that it should statistically be more safe, and, you know, test myself when I'm getting punched in the face.
I'm testing myself.
Yeah. And that first fight kind of ties into my new job now. The first guy that I fought, it ended up being a professional fight because I didn't understand the fight game. He was recently released from prison, which ties into the rest of our conversation here in a little bit, right? And I won that fight in the second round on pure adrenaline and willpower. After that, I actually started training. I went to Paul Tom's Academy in American Fork, Utah, and started studying under him in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and his association is under Flavio Bering. Had a couple more fights that did not go my way because I was nowhere near a professional. Got my blue belt and was going to fight my first guy again. And I was training to fight him, and I broke my arm. And shortly after breaking my arm, I got laid off from that particular job. And when my arm healed, I started working at the prison.
Okay. All right. Well, sounds like, you know, things take their direction they're meant to be, or what have you, right? I mean, sometimes broken arm.
They go where they need to go, and I have it worked in serious ways for sure.
Yeah, or where they needed to go. There you go. So how did you? Okay, we got to touch upon Arnold. So how did you get? Like, because you were a student under Arnold, correct?
Yes, I would consider myself a student with Arnold. We've been working for a little while now, and that introduction was purely serendipitous. Tied to the job, I was out in Atlanta for an American Probation and Parole Association, and I asked my instructor at the time, Jake Brosnan, hey, I'm headed to Atlanta. Do we have any instructors you can hook me up with? And Arnold was one of those. I had a lesson with Baste Carlos as well. But Arnold, something about our interaction really, really hit me and had me reach out to him again. It took me a little bit just because the nature of adulthood. But I reached out to him and was like, hey, would you mind doing a virtual lesson for us here at the gym? And in that conversation sparked a whole another conversation, and that sparked another conversation. We had our lesson, and I was blown away by his teaching style. There's been some things that should be complicated that he's explained to me, and it's just it clicks in a whole different way. And lately we've been able to grow that relationship, and he's helped me with a lot of concepts in my grading here, with Tuhan Jared as well, moving through material, and then introducing me to you and your material as well.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, he's a good guy. Absolutely, for sure. Yeah. So it sounds like some training with Arnold, Yale University under Tuhan Jared. Is that pretty much it as far as status quo?
So I've had quite a few two instructor development classes with Tuhan Jason Jones of Red Desert Dogs out in Wyoming, but he's also in the PTTA. And then Ninjoli Brown, when he's been out here a few times. Had the opportunity to meet him first through, again, my instructor, Jake Brosnan, and Ninjoli was out here, and we went over some, the Sigong Labo concepts.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my first introduction to taking a drill and putting it into a real life application. So he was kind of pivotal in that moment of my FMA understanding, breaking the drills apart.
Yeah.
And then GN, Paulo Rubio, who's been around a little bit, who popped his noggin in here
Wow.
just to be a little bit of a nuisance to me. Good conversation with him as well, and just kind of asking the right questions and giving me a different way to see some of the same problems. Looking at things from an outside perspective as someone that has knowledge and someone that doesn't, and asking the right questions so that both of those get their proper answer.
Nice. I mean, I've heard nothing but good things about the university. So sounds like it's a pretty incredible team in place. So
Well, it served me well, I can say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, okay, so after the trial and error of MMA, the broken arm, laid off, got a job at the prisons.
Yes.
About right? Okay.
That's it.
Yeah. So now, before taking the job there, was there any kind of law enforcement jobs you were doing, or did it all come from your initial taking of being a CO?
All of it starts from that initial CO period. Prior to that, the only involvement I had with law enforcement was negative, was truly being on the other side. And my goal getting into law enforcement in the first place was to be the cop that I needed when I was in those situations.
Gotcha.
I had some pretty negative experiences back home in Alabama, and having the opportunity to leave that situation and be presented with a chance to be on the other side. That personal challenge there was just something I couldn't ignore. And the times just came out right, being laid off from the oil industry and the opening at the prison. That application and background period overlapped perfectly and was almost destined to happen, it feels like.
Oh, good. Okay. And this is going some 6 years ago or so?
This was in 2016. 2015 is when I started in the prison and the academy. And then I had a short hiatus after graduating the academy where there was a pretty major incident that affected me quite a bit and kind of sent some shockwaves through. And I had to bounce back from that. But in that time, I was able to go and I worked as a court bailiff and transport and serving misdemeanor warrants. And I worked at a county jail as well before returning to prison as a CO and then promoting to a parole agent, which is my current job title.
Okay.
And we are one of the few states, I think there's 2 or 3 that actually have our parole and probation agents for the state that are fully law enforcement certified. So I have all the perks of being a street cop without any of the negative paperwork and tickets and interacting with the public. It's kind of a sweet gig.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of neat. Like, I mean, you kind of wearing some different hats and doing some different things all under there. I mean, obviously, each aspect runs differently in there. But yet, the overall experience is paying off, right?
Oh, absolutely. You get a couple of good course corrections, rudder taps, and you either fall down or you get back up after you fall down, right? And I definitely picked myself up, and then I started climbing and digging myself way ahead of anything I thought I would be able to do. SWAT school, narcotics task force, gang task force, our current fugitive team, interagency training, ATF, DEA, and some of the training that I've been able to get on those different task forces and with the current job title that I have been opportunities that I never thought I would be able to accomplish. And in a relatively short time. So I started in 2015. So here it is, a total of almost 9 years, and I've hit most of my career goals. Defensive tactics instructor, firearms instructor, SWAT school, taser. I teach at the academy. I'm actually being able to have some input in how our defensive program continues to build within the UDC. And coming from the roots where I came from, I'm extremely humbled whenever I see it on paper.
That is, that's something we want to talk about when we get deeper. Like you, not only on the job, but having some input in what they should be giving as far as instruction to the employees. When we get to that, I kind of feel like, what do you think is needed? Are these are being addressed fully based on status quo, or is your goal to bring in more expertise, more knowledge, to better serve the guards in there? So actually, something we can speak on now. And then we're going to get into the other stuff. But what do you overall see missing?
So I think within all of law enforcement, I've been able to there's a culture where we're presented with enough to get us through the job. If the job had no variables and was strictly exactly what you think policing or corrections is, we have answers for those problems. And what we don't have is what happens when things go awry. What is the answer when the base level doesn't fit? The problem is, to get those answers, is it takes more time. It takes more training, which means you need more instructors, which means you need more funding, which means you need more time off the clock to continue to train so that you can be more proficient on the job. For the lowest probability of occurrence, but the highest probability of injury or, a use of force, versus the complete opposite. Why put more emphasis on firearms if you have one shooting a year, whereas you have less emphasis on DT, but you handcuff people every single day? Trust, things don't go bad for you very often as law enforcement, but when they do, it's essentially lethal. Most of the time when it goes bad, you're seeing officers that have to fight for their life. The body camera footage is out there. It's no secret that we are often attacked simply because of the badge.
Sure.
Right? Rarely is it a personal attack, but the hat that we choose to wear, even as a corrections officer, our job is safety and security. They're the ones that deal with us every single day, and we deal with them sometimes more than our own families. And all it takes is for one person, guard or offender, to be on the bad day, and everyone else has to answer for a rash decision.
Yeah. Wow. So, I'll get a little more specific here. What about as far as overall night defense? Like, what are they getting for training?
Say that one more time.
As far as night defense, like, what are they getting for training? Do you think it suffice? Do you think it's an area that can be greatly improved upon?
That's actually been my primary focus since coming into Paquiti Tertia and getting introduced to FMA. Our previous curriculum, a few years ago, we had a knife curriculum that I'm not too familiar with at all. When I came in, our primary defenses that were taught in defensive tactics were an X-block redirect, hitting low redirect, and it was very minimal, and there wasn't a lot of pressure testing for the techniques themselves. As things continued to progress since I've been here, the techniques have expanded a little bit to be less to steal a word from Tuhan Jared, techniquey, and to have more application. But it still wasn't quite enough. So I had the opportunity to bring one of our training supervisors into the TRICOM edged weapon countermeasures. We got that class going. We had that supervisor and another agent that works PT with me. And we took the two programs, what we already had in post, and the basics of this knife defense course that its basis is Pikiti Tertia, and took the commonalities and blended them together. And it took us almost 2.5 years before our full first class was introduced to the curriculum. And it's extremely basic. Like, it's just a low line, high line, mid line, getting into 2-on-1s. Not a lot of dexterity is needed. It's gross motor skills, but it's more than we had. And I think I've been able to show that even with that, we still need more. You know, and we'll get into this later, there's only so many ways to attack, but we need more answers on the defense.
You know, I look at like workers' comp, you know, paying all this money and like, so no, I look at what you're going to pay on the back end, or I look at what you can pay on the front end with better training. And I guess I'm just amazed that more resources are just not put into that. Maybe they are, maybe I'm just not aware, but my guess is no.
No, and it's not just a local issue. It is truly a national issue, because in all honesty, the things that are the most effective are the community programs. The things that are the most effective to defeating recidivism in the penal system is treatment and counseling and programming and skills. So whenever the focus is primarily there, it doesn't leave a lot for development of the officer themselves. It's not that the need's not there, that the want's not there. I think for the most part, it does come down to funding. And there's definitely a compensation risk, right? Workers' comp, injuries on the job, use of.
Yeah, like I worked in the state of Connecticut, and so I have a little insight as far as how government agencies work in regards to training versus how the workers' comp. And I just know from the agency I worked at, they had a ton of workers' comp cases. I mean, I know this for a fact. I was a union delegate. I know this for absolute fact. I'm absolutely pretty confident that if there was more money spent in the front end to improve what they consider was a good program as far as challenging clients and handling with behavior, I really believe it would reduce. Now, that's group home. I look at what you guys, where, I mean, like I'm like maybe in the middle of the road. I mean, we're obviously here, you know what I mean? So I just understand the mindset of these government agencies,
Well, maybe you can come and argue to our legislature and our government agencies on our behalf, because I don't think there's really an elegant way to put it. There's no way to really dance around it. It is definitely an inadequacy in law enforcement all the way around. And if you have an answer, please share it, and share it nationally, because right now we kind of don't have one. And we're kind of to blame as well. You think of our shift work, right? Our attention span. One of the great misconceptions is divorce rates are higher, DV rate is higher, alcoholism, and that's not the case. But what is being overworked, overtime shifts, the attacks that we've had on our character, in the last few years with news events and social movements, that wears down on people.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I that working in a corrections environment, right, where you're kind of isolated from what normal society is for most of your week. And as a law enforcement officer, you're constantly responding to the worst moments of everybody's lives. You're getting degraded because you pulled over the soccer mom who was doing 10 over. It starts to wear on you. It takes a different kind of person for sure. Now tell that same person, hey, we can't afford to train you the way you feel like you need to be trained. So on your own time, on your own dime, there's a whole bunch of MMA gym. There's a jiu-jitsu. It's just, it kind of falls on you to figure that out. You just don't have the time and the heart to do it. Some of us,
I mean, if you're working, you're getting mandated in overtime. Like I used to work. Like it wasn't a choice. You weren't going home. I mean, it was pretty simple. Like somebody didn't come in, you're not going. So you take that exhaustion, injuries, morale, bureaucracy, blue tape, I mean, red tape, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, it can be very challenging, and it absolutely starts to wear you. Now throw dangerous inmates, weapons.
right?
Yeah, not a good combination.
It's definitely a job that's not for the weak of mind. It takes a certain fortitude to work in a corrections environment, period. The way I explain to people when I worked inside the wire is it's everything you think it is, but it's nothing like what you think it is. It's the dichotomy of that statement is insane because it is exactly both of those. You are, the first time you hear those gates shut behind you as an officer, knowing I'm the only one in here and I can't get out of this room. That hits you in the knees.
That's eerie.
And if it doesn't, more power to you. But I can guarantee you, I've seen it with academy classes. That gate closes and you're surrounded by, these people who are being punished for crimes. I'm trying to choose words carefully here, right? But you're surrounded by this element that for a lot of people, they are very unfamiliar with, and an environment where you can't escape. That's mentally taxing day one. Now do that.
You can't escape.
Yeah, you can't escape. And you're surrounded. You are outnumbered. And in our facilities specifically, the only weapons, if you could even call it that, the only deterrence that we have, first and foremost, right, our noggin. Secondly, most of us will carry pepper spray. We don't have tasers. There's no nightsticks, no batons, and our radio. And we are very focused on our team tactics should something go down. But at the time, it's just.
What's the ratio on any particular cell block?
Depends on the population, and things are constantly evolving for us currently because we have a new prison that was built a couple of years ago. We opened up, I believe, 2 years ago, and our maximum security is, I believe, they're one cell and 4 to a section or to a sub day room, but there's not a lot of one-on-one. Those are out, it's 2 officers. We have different day rooms that are 8 to 1. And then as you get into general population, typically it's going to be, I believe, 1 to like 64. What's 12 times 24? Up to a dorm environment. And we are currently legislated to do direct supervision. So our previous facility that I worked at, we stayed outside. We'd go in for checks, walk around the tier, but now we are legislatively mandated to be in these sections. And the thought behind that is now we have that personal interaction, right? So it becomes less of a us and them. We're in there. We can answer questions. We're available for, eyes on inside the sections if something goes down, if there's an altercation or, a medical event. Now we're in there, and our COs weren't really used to that kind of supervision up until recently.
That, I mean, is there an external microphone here? Just an echo.
There may be an echo just because of this silly room that I'm in.
Okay. I'm just thinking that's just insanity. Like, you're looking around, like, I would be looking like for another nope. I mean, okay, let's put it this way. I know you can't answer an exact time frame, and we'll get into all the other stuff. If I got the question going, jump on the walkie-talkie, generally speaking, how long would it take somebody
because of our news system, sometimes it's less than a minute, 30 seconds. The way we're set up, we should have constant line of sights. Previously, it was really bad. If someone was watching you, you'd probably be sitting anywhere from 2 minutes, quickest, before you had someone there for backup. And
that's a lot can happen in 2 minutes.
A lot can happen in 30 seconds, right?
I mean, yeah.
Wow. I can specifically think of one event that I personally witnessed, and by the time we had enough people to respond as per our policy and to be able to move through and had all proper permissions, we were probably sitting at 15 minutes from us responding to the incident. And trust, this particular incident was like one bad situation after another that allowed this one to happen. But it really was the catalyst that showed where our inadequacies were in these kind of situations. And it provided a lot of training opportunity later, for sure.
So yeah, something major has happened, catastrophic before this change, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, things were kind of leaning in. There's a pendulum that swings on, heavy hand versus therapy and social work. And it is hard to find that balance because there are offenders that go in and have truly made minor mistakes. And because of the way that the inside of these facilities work, a minor crime on the outside compounded with the lifestyle and politics that happen inside, you can go on a 1 to 5 and be stuck for 30, right? I mean, it's no secret that gang culture really drives the penal system, and the adage is you can't survive alone. And
yeah, that's like almost like you're doing. All right, let's get into it. All right.
Okay. I will be delicate. I want to put
whatever you can disclose. I don't want to put you on the spot. No harm, no worries.
I do want to put the disclaimer that this is all the opinion of me. This is in no way a representation of my department. These are my personal observations and opinions.
There you
and go. Hopefully they stay very informative.
That's it. So gangs. All right. So you're in Utah, state maximum security.
Okay. Yes. So our population is very intermixed.
Okay.
Maximum security. There's no real separation of the population unless there's a security risk to one specifically. So if we have A group and they are larger than B group, and we have intelligence that B group is in serious danger, we may isolate B group for protection. Outside of that, they mingle pretty closely. There may be some that we create more barriers, but there's not A's over here, B's over here, C's here, Delta's here.
Western prison politics. 'Cause my major was, I was supposed to be a probation officer. Did an internship. I just couldn't do 20-year thing in a chair asking change of address, change the telephone number, change of job for 20 years. I just knew I couldn't do it. But I was set to be a probation officer. At any rate, West Coast politics. Groups stay within their groups. Some get along, the ones that don't. Is that Utah in line with that?
No, Utah is a different creature. Even on the streets, our gang populations have a different set of rules. They're falling more in line with the West Coast style more recently, but because of the population and because of the different cultures that are here, whereas say Chicago, New York, Atlanta, you have red on this side of the road, blue on this side of the road. If one is on the other side, there's problems.
Right.
We don't have sides of the road in Utah, right? So typically they are very intermixed. You see some of the gangs that have interracial members where outside of Utah, that's kind of frowned upon. Your primary gangs that you would be like the Bloods and the Crips. Well, you've got white boys in this one, and then you've got Asians, Polynesians, or you have your Hispanics that shouldn't be in this one and that one. It's very diverse, and that creates an interesting dynamic once they get into the prison system.
Yeah. You know what? Hold on, Andrew. There's an awful echo. When we started talking, I didn't hear it. Do you have like an external speaker, or you're not hearing it? It's coming from you.
Let's see. Maybe a little adjustment. Does that change anything?
Let me see. Yeah. How close is it to you?
Because there's nothing. Not using an external mic. This is just running off of my phone.
That's bizarre. I don't know. I mean, how close are you to the phone?
A little bit more than that.
The echo has been. Yeah, I know. We might just have to run. I'm not sure what we can do about it. Sound like from your. It's definitely not. No, it's coming to his side.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't know. There's feedback coming out of it. We might just have to run with it. I'm not sure what to do. Is there somebody else watching it by you?
Oh, I'm solo.
That's happened before. Okay. All right, we'll just get around with it. I'm not sure. Okay. Sounds. All right, I'll get to it. That's interesting because so far as like in other words, they're kind of together. I mean, like they're able to sit together, interact together, do commerce together.
Yeah, and we've had, so typically in the penal system, they'll divide by race, right? That's your full prison politics. But Utah, again, because of their culture, and the diversity inside the prison system, we have that same diversity. And then with that, yeah, you have your commerce. I like the way you put that, right? Your commerce, your business dealings, and that that different world that's in there still exists, and it exists across all of those lines. Are there? Absolutely, right? But in the interest of business and commerce, sometimes things get put away.
In the interest of commerce.
Yeah. I'm glad you gave me that lead, because that gave me a good out on that.
Yeah. That's funny. See, wait, it's better now, I think. Okay.
It may have been feedback from.
It's still there. It doesn't seem as loud as it was. And I checked what Carlo suggested. Let me just check out one more thing for kicks. Bear with me. Yeah, it's gonna take a while. We're gonna run with it. Conversation's great, so it'll make it for it. So, all right, intergang violence.
Yeah, and I'd like to also throw in there that it's not always gang violence, right? Sometimes it's just the nature of being incarcerated. We kind of touched on the pre-recording there that there is a different mentality whenever there is an attack, right? For the general population that's in there, it is a game of survival, right? It is prey and preyed upon. Now that sounds bad, and it truly is, but it's not the predominant driver in our specific facility. But the propensity for violence it's definitely there daily. And in fact, I would say we have about the same amount of incidents with gang involved, or SPG as we refer to it, as we do with folks that are not involved.
Okay.
Some of it is, mental health issues, where it's just the wrong day to be around this person. And then sometimes it is a way of protecting themselves in the long run. I've personally seen where a particular offender would act out because during a cell search we found, contraband and confiscated it. Well, now that person's accountable to another person or persons for that contraband.
So PC?
Yes, but you can't just go and be like, "Oh, I'm scared."
You have to
and that will a lot of times facilitate the closest thing to an officer assault without assaulting an officer. It's going to be words, too close proximity, complete defiance, sometimes pepper spray, right? And when you have inexperience and you don't have the confidence in yourself to handle those situations, that's where forces happen that have those negative consequences of injury. You have time off, officers getting reprimanded, so now they have to get time off they're getting paid for while there's investigations. And that's not even going into the actual assaults that someone ends up injured in.
Hopefully you can see this. This is from Kurt. He's still seeing connections between the Mal and Filipino gang alliance, like back in the 90s and 2000s, for example. Eastside Crips with 139ers and Kampala, no? Any evidence of
If you have questions on current gang politics inside the prison, you can reach out to me personally and I can vet you. If you're law enforcement, if you are, I would love to help answer those questions or point you in the right direction.
Okay,
But
no,
I don't have any direction on that.
that's understood.
But I can if you're vetted.
Got it. With what you can disclose without getting you in hot water. Stabbings. You've witnessed, seen.
Yes, I can discuss in enough where it would be educational for the audience.
I'll let you.
Yeah. So, you know, there are different levels of this. I've witnessed homicide. I've witnessed what is often referred to inside the gangs as violations. I've witnessed particular attacks that are specifically to maim and disfigure. And then outside of that, there's, you know, part of the team I work with, we've been able to review different footage, and we have, you know, lots of these incidents happening to study and build responses to, right? So particular attacks and weapons are the most important thing, I think, for our officers to know and understand when I teach our edge weapons, being first and foremost the availability of materials to create the weapons. When I teach my edge weapons class, we have a particular slide that goes through some of the materials that we provide for them from the state. And I pose the question, I was like, if you had nothing but time and you truly felt like you had to protect yourself with a weapon, would you be able to forge something out of these materials? And they'll be mundane materials. One of the first weapons that I confiscated was a baton that was made out of newspaper. Super tight, rolled up newspaper. Super, like, by the time it was about an inch thick, you couldn't break it. It was a heavy hitter. And it was used as a smudge tool for his drawing. So he would use the ink and then, you know, he would cut a piece off and then smudge. And the sad thing is the dude had some really beautiful art that he had created with it, but it was obviously for, you know, the other purposes. You know, what are the most common ones that we see, and what are the knife designs that are being come up with? And if you look in history, the designs don't really change a whole lot. So if you had minimal tools, what's the easiest thing to do? A pencil, a poker, something that's rigid and has a sharp edge. It only has to work once, right, to be effective. And then it truly does work up into less, again, I'm trying to choose my words carefully without providing tutorials here, less obvious materials that with minimal effort quickly become sharp and are not always easy to detect, all the way to nice, like really nice drawn blade shapes, Warncliffe style blades. Haven't seen a recurve yet. I think that takes a heat that they can't quite get, but you see a lot of the Warncliffe sack style blades. Anyone that works in corrections can draw you a quick sketch of these common things, but something as simple as a screw on a pencil wrapped with enough plastic and heated becomes a rigid stabbing tool. And what, as a human, what are one of the other things that we're going to provide to every man that's in there that grows a beard?
Razor.
Right? We provide a razor. And the interesting thing is most of the lethal incidents that I've seen, or the ones that at least have the highest injuries, weren't caused by razors. Razors are typically used specifically for superficial injuries.
Like intentional.
Intentional disfiguration or a nice show of force, because as humans, we're headhunters. Right? That's why you don't really see body shots in street fights. We're going for the computer, we're going for the face. And like right here, a good slash right here, it bleeds, and it bleeds a lot. And it's not that it's an artery, but it's what a mental effect to a group of people when one person is covered. It doesn't matter if it's legal,
how bad it looks.
but it looks bad, and now everybody's and that psychological effect is sometimes just as terrifying as an actual, serious injury.
Well, here's the thing, though. You do that to make a statement. Now the other guys see that, and holy crap! But like you said, not death, really the scar, incredible bleeding, look far worse than it is. The message that's being conveyed upon seeing that, I'm sure it speaks volumes.
Oh, absolutely. And the interesting thing with that too is a lot of the times that is an internal culture that does that to themselves. Whenever it's opposing groups, things are much different. That's where we start to get more of your lethal attempts. That's where you start to see the, I'm trying to not make it sound the way it truly is. You start to see the more serious injuries. You start to see more open wounds. You start to see deeper penetration of blades and weapons. And you start to see more close quarters, 2 versus 1. And the fight changes from, hey, dude, get off me. That's enough, to survival.
We're going to talk on that next. Do you see spear attacks increasing or decreasing where you are?
Spear attack? As in, like, chunking a spear?
Let's see if he will add more to that or explain further.
Like Tony Blauer's spear.
No, I'm going to guess.
I can answer both of those questions because that's the only 2 spears I'm aware of. No, we don't provide them enough material to create anything like a spear. Our brooms and sticks are and mobs are closely guarded and watched. Should it be an opportunity, I'm sure it may happen. We don't have any spear, or for that matter, any real impact weapon attack. I think there's been 1 or 2 where it's been like a stick, but nothing like a spear. And so far as this kind of spear, as a reactionary tool, I've seen it a couple times in fights, but not that it's trained specifically.
Okay, he just expanded on this. Oh, here. Okay, here's one. Roll paper drenched with water, rolled tight.
Yeah, that's the batons that I was talking about.
Okay. He's calling a spear. I got you. Okay.
But not necessarily a spear. And I haven't even seen in any of our boards or any of the evidence that I've had the opportunity to check out with our law enforcement bureau, anything that is sharpened specifically or has a point on the end. I believe in my PowerPoint I have examples of that, but I don't think that they're particularly from our facilities yet.
I've seen them with sharp points. Okay.
I haven't ran into those or seen those recently.
Okay. Wherever you can speak on the knife attacks, was there tactics that you saw more times than not?
Say that one more time.
And tactics that you saw more times than not, or ambush, or there was a conversation, kind of lured them into a comfort zone, or
I've witnessed both, but typically it's a ambush tactic. I have seen legit knife duels. I stand in front of you, you stand in front of me. We go, we take a break. We have a mediator over here. We go at it again. I've seen one instance of that, and it did not end well. Typically, it is an ambush tactic.
typically, okay.
It is opportunistic, and if you plan for the opportunity and you're ready for the opportunity when it presents itself, and you're dedicated, you'll follow through. A lot of times that happens when the right things on our side line up. Shift change. I just finished a section check. The wrong door gets opened on accident. Maybe you fat fingered the button and you open two opposing doors that shouldn't. And these that have the drive for the attack are waiting for us. And when that happens, we've been able to respond pretty quickly, but you can't control, even in a secure environment, number one, the choices and every piece of that environment. There's always going to be something that can be exploited by someone that's looking for that weakness.
Is there, okay, a few questions. This is fascinating. Thank you. Within the ambush aspect, which you're generally, I'm going to get to that, but within the ambush tactics, which you're frequently seeing, are they getting attachments, or are they just getting blindsided, or a little both?
Yes, both. It's exactly that. So you will have, hey, we're cool. All of a sudden, we're in the thick of it. Where it's a face-to-face conversation, and maybe it's a signal, maybe they were waiting for the wrong word to be said, and it's on. Other times, it simply goes quiet. You have no idea anything's going to happen, and all of a sudden, there it is. It's just bam, lightning flash, hands flying, and it's not pretty to see. There's no elegance.
Yeah, I can't imagine it. No, definitely not pretty to see. No, I mean, and this is taking place. It could be in a room, corridor, stairwell, out in the yard. I mean,
everywhere. Whether we're standing there or not.
That's crazy. Whether you're standing there or not, if there's a hit, I mean, it's coming.
Well, imagine this: if we're in a particular social group and I'm bottom tier and I am told to do something, I don't do it, I have repercussions. And those repercussions may be the very task that I was asked to carry out.
That you didn't carry out. Like if you're a soldier, you better be doing what's coming down the line, or else you were going to be at the end. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Here's
that's what I'm talking about. A 1 to 5 can easily turn into 30 years just because you're the lowest guy on the totem.
Can you imagine that? You go in there, you get a freaking shoplifting thing. You get 1 year and whatever. But because you have to fall in ranks by choice, or you link up, whatever, and then you have to do something, and your 1 year just turned to 30. I mean, how sad is that?
Well, it's the nature of things, and we've as a society kind of designed it, not intentionally, but the designs that we've created make that the logical progression inside. But what is the best answer? You know, our criminal justice system has so many different avenues, and it's clear, especially now in this modern age, that the criminal element is not slowing down. If anything, it's even more brazen.
Yeah.
And how are we going to respond to that? And our culture and our society is doing the same wax and wane. As violence goes up, typically our response is softer. And when the violence goes down, we respond with a heavy hand. And,
It makes sense. You're seeing what's going on here in the public, you know what I mean? Today, and people are doing that behind the walls. Here's a question from Mike. Any plastic bags, garbage bags melted and formed into a knife, extremely small. Those were made extremely fast.
I have not witnessed any of those. Our plastic bags are pretty well monitored. We don't really have any real flame or heat that would allow that kind of melting. We see a lot of stingers. If you're in corrections, you'll know that that's basically like taking two ends of the plug, keeping them separate so that you can put them in water, in boil water. Not typically really enough heat to melt plastic down to a solid form. Typically enough to light a cigarette or to boil a cup of noodles. We watch that pretty closely. I feel like if that were to happen, with the way that we're set up now, we'd be on top of that pretty quick.
Back to knife on knife. It seems like there was some time going on. Was it a matter of that the guards just couldn't get there, or? But I mean, I'll let you tell me.
So every system has a flaw and a blind spot or a routine that can be exploited. Right? Every facility, it's impossible not to have. The particular one where I'm talking about, the knife duel, heavily exploited that. All of the aspects of this particular altercation exploited every single weakness that could have been exploited that day. And with those blind spots in a corrections environment, when I responded, everyone was eating noodles. They were talking on the phone. They were watching TV. You have no idea that something just went down unless you're truly paying attention. And this knife on knife situation that I'm describing now was exactly that. It was under a stairwell, kind of tucked in a corner, and it was a perfect storm of circumstances that allowed the duel to continue. Other instances, the knife on knife fights are maybe premeditated by the two sides, and they don't care if we show up. They're going to take their business. And I've seen pepper balls, pepper spray, less lethal shotguns deployed, and they're fighting until they decide they're done. And it goes back to that same, if you're ordered to do something, you're going to do what you're ordered to do, because sometimes those inside politics overpower anything the system could do to them.
Coming down from the system, right? Man, that's just, I mean, just the power that some of these guys have, obviously, over these individuals by the gang structure. I mean, Who typically your gangs in there? Pisces, Norteños, Morenos, Crips, Bloods.
We have the big four. The one that we don't really have is, so we have a white supremacist group. We have our Bloods and Crips. We have our Norteños and Sureños, and different subdivisions of each of those. And I know I said four, and then I went and gave you five names, but a couple of those currently are classified as one. Whereas in most of the penal systems and correctional facilities, they're completely separate. But for us, there are certain ones that we group together.
So depending on and they're kind of gel together. Okay. So is it virtually impossible that you're going to just stop weapons from being? I mean, is it just out of the realm of possibilities?
It's not out of the realm. It just, we don't have the answer yet.
Is it manpower, or it goes beyond that?
I think it goes beyond that into what the system actually is versus what the intent is. If you bring violent people, you're going to get violent. And one of the things that we have been able to do in this state is we are able to at least recognize that we have these lower level offenders and offenses that if we can, maybe the best thing to do is to separate those from, these higher propensity for violence, these higher hardened criminals, the ones that don't want to change yet. Maybe they won't. But we are able to focus more on the ones that have that will to reintegrate society. And our current classification systems are really kind of showing that we are seeing a lot less of our population interacting upwards into the criminal ladder and trying to create that recidivism.
So obviously within these you got shot callers, right? And do you guys know who they are for the most part? Okay, we'll go with that. No problem.
Sometimes it is very clear, and there are conversations. Other times it takes detective work, and yeah.
It was answered. So, is it generally the attacks? Is generally speaking something sharp, fabricated? Are there other things that are being used besides what you described with the paper?
No, so the paper really not too often. It's typically going to be something with a point or an edge, or it's going to be empty hands. Some of our population have much larger hands that should be considered weapons. And there have been instances where that can be just as lethal as weapons, right? It's all in the effort and the intent behind what you hold in your hands or what you don't. The predominant edged weapon attack, though, is going to be something like your sack, something very easy to get to a point. It doesn't even really have to have a slice of cutting edge. In my experience, the actual attacks that are meant to be fatal will typically be puncture wounds or flash wounds. It's much easier to get a tool to a point than it is to get a point edge.
Makes sense.
Right. So you see a lot of hooking attacks, a lot of downward attacks and forward runs.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense.
Flashing angles. It's almost boxing with.
Makes sense. So, whatever you can discuss, you had to use any tactics that you're trained in to defend yourself.
I have been lucky enough not to have to.
Thank God.
First weapon, right, is my mind. It's space, it's distance, it's communication. Not everyone has that same skill, but no, I have not had to use any of the tactics or technique that I've learned to defend myself from anything like a fatal attack.
Is it because you establish a good rapport, or they just see you as respectful?
It's all of the above, right? I kind of gave you a brief of my background, and a lot of what happens in corrections is you were either almost an offender or you've never seen red light behind you. And sometimes there is a false sense of security being familiar with the criminal element, where you're like, oh, I know the lingo, or no, I can go walk around those guys. I can go into these bad neighborhoods. I used to live in those bad neighborhoods. And they forget to give respect to the situation as it is with this interaction. They're falling back on their experience, but they forget that things are different now. You're law enforcement. You're not Johnny on the block. You're not Johnny from the block. So you're not safe. But what you can take all that is that respect. They're still a human being. Talk to them like they're human beings, and be aware that any point could be their worst moment. You could just be the one that is standing in front of them when they break.
That's what I mean. Might have nothing to do with you. Cell phones, big thing in there. Cell phones.
I'm not going to really yes or no that one.
Okay, no worries. Training behind. You've actually seen inmates training.
I have.
So what are they training?
Luckily, we don't have anything like 52 blocks or hyperormesis in our system yet. So let's talk about this a little bit. And this is part of what sparked this conversation here and what I touched on in the beginning. Utah in the mid 2000s became a mecca for mixed martial arts. So not only do we have world-class wrestling programs and jiu-jitsu that's spread, but with mixed martial arts, boxing, Muay Thai, everything came in all at once with this big spectacle that is MMA, UFC, right? And we had a lot of pop-up smaller groups, such as Ultimate Combat Experience that I fought in, Steel Fist, which I think is what it is now, and local fights, underground fights, the Fight Club explosion. Who is attracted to that world? Right? It makes sense that you're going to have higher violent people participating in these because of the spectacle that it was. And that's exactly what we had. A lot of our population trained in something at least. Fast forwarding to my first fight, that guy had been training, I believe, for 2 years before he went in. Before he went into the system. And then when he got out, I believe he was only out for a couple of weeks before we had our fight. And that dude was in shape, right? So you have, before they go in, after they get out, the availability of training. You have social media YouTubes that have these tutorials all over the place.
I
You know,
know.
a lot of my early training came from YouTube videos of Keenan Cornelius in this fighter guard, learning how to box with Anderson Silva, Jens Pulver, uh, and then the title boxing videos. But even before that, we had Kung Fu Magazine, karate, mail order, Gracie DVDs and movies, uh, karate by this guy, Matt. Uh, the heart maker, the boxer, the no hold barred guy, right? Those VHS tapes. Uh, so you have that element. What also we had was your returning population from overseas in that conflict. You know, the military combatives programs were kind of really refined in these times. And we have guys that are enlisting, discharged, and coming back with more training than they had when they left, falling on hard times and ending up in the system. So you have that baseline population. When I went through the academy, you hear stories of, you know, past, and there's plenty of documentaries online. But when you're sitting in the academy, you hear the stories of people rolling up their mattresses and creating heavy bags and using these heavy bags to practice for hours, unrolling their stuff. You're like, yeah, whatever. And then you're like, okay, well, we don't allow that. So when you see it, you shut it down. But guess what? You can't just stay there and watch. These people get this training outside and they come in. You can make mitts out of chunkless, sitting here, pop, 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 pop on the tier. The second the guard's gone, you're working mitts. Slip. It can be ugly, but guess what? It's training.
It's training. Exactly.
I've personally seen dudes shin kicking the section walls. Like, this is iron. You see Thai dudes do this to banana trees, you're like, no way, that's not real. And then you hear conk, conk, conk coming from the section across from you. And it's a dude in there working high kicks. Now, some of this could be intimidation tactics. Right? Hey, I train. You
right, you're letting everybody else know that. Like, okay.
Right? Or it's, hey, I train. Come train with me. That way, you know, I'm in good graces here. But we try to shut that down as often as we can, but it's in there and it does exist. I would be, you know, sitting on a bed of lies if I said I haven't seen it with my own eyes. It's there. It is happening.
What would freak me out is you seeing somebody that working together and they're going to a body temple. You know?
Right?
It would be like.
So, you know, I talked about us being headhunters. If you know that, how many times you can sit in there, you know, and you're low body shot, low body shot, low body shot for hours. We cut off the lights at 10 o'clock. We cut them on maybe at 7 o'clock in the morning. And then they have the opportunity to sleep all day. What do you think they're doing in there? They're plotting, they're planning, they're working out. They're mandated to work out. And if you're not in the mandates, you're working out because the guy next to you is working out, or the guy in the next cell is working out. And it's the society in there, like I said before, is everything you think it is, but nothing like you think it is. It is an environment that definitely fosters a training mentality, if nothing else.
If they're training, man, that would be hope. We got a question just came in. Do you find that former criminal affiliates turned LEO have a higher rate of failure on the field in comparison to their counterparts?
I would say it's equal. Right? It comes down to the person. What I've been able to observe from those around me, and being one of those myself, it's a slippery slope either way, and it takes the mental fortitude to push forward. And everyone has a different moral turpitude to continue pushing forward in this field. And for some people, it falls. And for other people, they stand on that as a witness and continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I build on my personal past experience to push me forward. Don't make the same mistakes I made. Make new ones, right? But it should be my job as a person to stop you from making those and to make your career moving forward easier. And for some people, if you are too comfortable in that criminal aspect, you're going to slip and slide. And that's where we get our silly Hollywood movies like Training Day and stuff from those real life experiences where we get the question every once in a while, that one bad apple, how did he get the job? Well, maybe he was the man for the job until he decided he wasn't.
Yeah, right. Maybe that's a good point. Maybe he was the best qualified applicant until whatever happened. Right? Wow. Overall, I guess of the agency, what would you, besides the training, what other changes would you like to see for the benefit of the officer?
Ooh, that one is, oh, you're hitting me with a tough one to answer. What I would like to see is more evidence-based and more evidence-driven conversation. A lot of the culture, military and law enforcement it's been done this way. This works. This is how we're going to continue to do this. And Pat Mack calls it institutional inbreeding, right? And what I would like to see is that, and what I want to do for our department as well, is what is the empirical data saying that we should focus on? Like, we still have to have a baseline, but if most of our officer assaults are sucker punches, why are we getting sucker punched in that situation? Not the outside influences. What is allowing that contact to be made? Is it proximity? Is it, complacency with the particular person or environment? And then what is the most common attack? Like, are we seeing more low line thrust versus high line thrust? If we're seeing more low line, the emphasis should be on low line. If we're seeing more officer involved shootings because of reaching into pockets, maybe we should focus on, creating the right angle and counter cover. Maybe we should look at more body camera footage of pre-fight indicators. Right? They're not always going to be there, but we want to give the best option. So take, for example, the Las Cruces officers' body cam footage that was just recently released at fatal incident. No one should ever be on the receiving end of that kind of attack, but they are real and they do happen. What did we see? Why did it happen? What can we take away from that and train our people to do? So first and foremost, on an edge weapon attack, closing the distance. Right? That is counterintuitive, first and foremost, to the human being ever. You see something sharp, you don't want to get closer to it. And then the back pedal was his fatal flaw. He had nearly 180 degrees on the other side.
Yeah.
So I would like to answer your question, for departments to look at the empirical data and have conversations based on the evidence versus the way things are going or the public perception of how it may look. They need to actually respond to what is happening, not what has kept it from happening in the past.
Do you feel, I guess, well, let's start with respects to your institution, that there should be more guards?
I believe that is for all institutions.
I mean, that's why
Um,
I hear understaffed. I mean, yeah.
that yes, but ideally, yeah, it should be like a classroom. Even a 1 to 20 ratio is a lot.
Oh my gosh, the criminals?
It's far more ideal than 1 to 40.
I just,
What
I,
if what if we had 2 to 24? Well, that's even more ideal because now we've got 4 eyes instead of 2 eyes. So
how do
more
you?
bodies is definitely going to help all the way around, but it's going to also create all new problems.
I guess my question is, how do they? I mean, like when I hear these numbers as far as ratios, right? Because again, I used to work for a state, and we had certain ratios within the group homes, and they were stringent. I mean, there was no getting around it. I mean, you would just get mandated. It wasn't. You weren't going home. Um,
Right.
how did they justify? Like how did they come about this? Like determining one for 50. I mean,
I'm not sure what that process is, but I know that there was a lot of discussion, enough discussion for it to make the legislative hill. I'm just not privy to what those discussions were. Um, but if you look at it, there's got to be a discussion about risk versus safety and quality of training, quality of we refer to it as programming. That's our classes and our different uh, things that we're able to help the offenders get into to try to change that criminality. But 1 to 1 isn't possible.
sure, no, okay, fair. I mean, and that's understandable.
And I don't think there is a good answer. I don't think there is a perfect number. It's just
Yeah, I just look at, I
do
guess,
the
like
best we
and
can.
again, easy for me to say, but in other words, let's take it. And I'm just going to use random numbers here. Let's take a cell block. We got, you know, obviously, 2 rows. Let's just say 30-30, right? So 60 on
Okay.
this particular cell block. And based on what
Not
I'm hearing from
completely.
you, that would be like maybe one person. You know what I mean? Or two, the most. I mean, depending on, what's going on. I mean, and that just to me, like, okay, well, let's even take it a little back further. Worst case scenario, I'm on the cell block. I have 60 beds. What is my job? Is my job to do periodical walkdowns back and forth, or is it my job to say in the central location?
Yes, it's both, right? I'm in a central location. I'm listening. I'm observing. I'm answering questions. I've got duties that I have to do throughout the day as well, making sure that commissary slips are filled out. Then we have laundry. We've got chow movements. We've got indigent supplies, and then we've got we call it OMR, and then where we meet with the offenders and we talk about their incarceration plan, post incarceration plan. These things happen daily, weekly, and we go cell to cell, and we do our cell searches, and we keep compliance, and you know, God forbid something happened in the cell next to us and we're one of the responders. So now we have to leave our section, go respond to that. Now we come back and we're going back into our normal plan, right? We go from 0 to 100, adrenaline dump, come back in, and we're back on to answering questions and going back to doing laundry, doing our section checks, and then boom, maybe something else happens and we go adrenaline shots up, and then it's over. We come back in and we breathe. And at the old facility, I can tell you there were days where I responded 3 or 4 times across the whole facility, and you have that adrenaline up and down, adrenaline up and down, adrenaline up and down. Um, staffing is always going to be an issue in the corrections environment because of the nature of the business. We're always going to be outnumbered.
Yeah, yeah. I just, and I get it. It's not ever going to be the perfect ratio. I get it. But I mean, obviously funding and there, I mean, and then you got, well, digressing here, obviously the state-run facilities versus private facilities, like you have a lot in the South, which I hear are just disastrous and just terribly run. Um, but with the state-run facilities such as yours, I mean, even then, like, how many clients on staff? Is it a lot? Fairly frequent?
It is not very frequent.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
It'll come in waves. When we moved to the new facility, I would say we were in a wave for a while as things were being tested. But so far as staff assaults, typically, if a staff is assaulted by something other than a mental health episode or somebody's bad day, if it is a major assault, it shuts the prison down. What happens? Yeah, what happens when it's locked down? Now we can't communicate. Now we can't further our commerce. Right? And that's just not good for the trade. So the other thing that happens is when staff is assaulted, obviously the answer is going to be a lot more heavy-handed in response. Right.
And knowing that, different gangs are going to be broken up. So I can totally see, like, if you're a shot caller or leader, like I'm gonna be guessing that's something you're not advocating to your disciples. Like, unless guy did something horrific to one of the fellow members or something. But what's your point? Now you're on lockdown. Now we can leave. I mean, right? Like, so who's gonna want that, right?
So they're rare. And that being said, staff assaults are going to be far more spontaneous. That's where we need our pre-fight indicators. That's where we need to have different responses to most common attacks. The sucker punch, right, is going to be probably the most common, that big wailing overhand bar fight. But at the same time, you can't teach awareness.
Yeah.
Right? And that seems to be the biggest common denominator for our staff assaults is that it's the awareness.
Because of like you were mentioning during test run, just it's kind of a younger generation coming in.
That is a major part. So our offender population is pretty diverse, but it's obviously a little heavier 30 to 40, 50-year-old bodies, because this is the state system, right? Your county jails, our current criminal justice system they fight to keep you out of prison, and for good reason. There's a lot of resources here in Utah that a lot of other states don't have, and in some cases it makes sense. So probation, and we don't have 3 strikes, but if you mess up bad enough, you're going. And typically that's going to take you longer to get into the state system. Our younger population is typically going to end up in a Fed system before they come to the States because of gun crime. So we recently lowered our age to 19 for state correctional officers. So that generated a lot more interest in this younger generation. And so you see these Gen Zers, I'm sorry, that'd probably be the most controversial thing I say here, that are coming in and trying to manage Gen X. That is 2 different worlds.
Yeah, you got a 19-year-old coming in from today to an OG, if you will. Yeah. I don't see that. I don't see that working out too well.
It's interesting to watch. I can say that.
I mean, that's probably painful to watch.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean 19. I'm just thinking like you were saying during the event, like they probably never had lights come up behind them or been pulled over, generally speaking, or anything. And here they are in a world of, you know, criminals of all walks of life and never even dealt with the law. And at 19, that's a pretty heavy adjustment.
It is the life experience isn't there. Now, some of these kids are locked away, and I say kids affectionately. Some of these kids are locked on, and they are definitely like the job they're in, they are going to exceed in. And then there are some that aren't. And there are a lot of people that dabble and try to get into this job, and they realize that it's just not for them, and it's okay. But with that, you also have other generational issues, right? This current generation, I don't want to say commitment issues, but the way that they view the rest of their life right now doesn't have as much consequence.
Mm.
Like
Yeah, I know
working,
exactly what you mean as far as like their views. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Here's a question. Okay, so this is from Mike. Do you find, let me just here. Do you find that the successful attacks on staff em, uh, embodied or, well, Jesus, I can't see that. What the hell? Attacks on staff, I'm going to say similar to the other inmates do the same, I think. What's that word? Staff. His question
So
is,
I'm thinking, I think I understand the question. Are the attacks similar to on staff as they are
yeah,
to offender on offender?
that's the way I'm reading it. Yeah.
No, and that's perfect because that's what you and I were talking about yesterday a short time as well. Um, Training martial arts, there I see three different facets of that. One is the martial art aspect of it. You're learning the art, the healing aspect, the meditation, the techniques, the forms. But there's a martial aspect to that, and that is the application of the techniques in self-defense. So the other two aspects of that, as law enforcement, it's much different than an average citizen who is truly defending their life. If someone attacks
Um,
law enforcement and I am fighting for my life as law enforcement, the second I gain the upper hand, regardless, I have to pull back.
right.
And that is always, it should be in the back of our mind because my goal is to control and get to a police solution. Typically, they're not fighting me, they're fighting the badge, they're fighting the establishment. Now, take that to civilian and offenders, and it's a different, totally different outcome. They're not attacking a badge or an institution, they are wishing me dead. When we're to that point, there is no negotiation, there's no pulling back as a civilian. They are trying to physically end me.
Mm.
So inside the institution, we typically see sucker punches. We typically see, a quick 1-2. Oh, I did a thing, and it's over. But we've had some significant incidents where that wasn't the case. And I can't say if it was premeditated or if it was spontaneous, and this particular incident just happened because the opportunity was there, but it was pretty significant. And that officer did the best he could to survive it and made it through. But it was definitely a shock to the system that that kind of attack had happened. And when we see the offender population attacking each other, it is much more grotesque and it's meant to be so. When it's an attack on an officer, it is typically a momentary thing just to either escape a situation or out of frustration or a mental health break. So it's two
Right,
different
right, right.
mindsets. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So status quo right now, like, how are things right now? Are things pretty calm, or you got some gang activity, or I mean, like rivalries are going on, or something about to pop off, or
I can say nothing suggests that we are on the precipice of a major event, but the threat is always there, just because of how politics work. We're
mm,
not, we're kind of always on trying to be more active and in there versus being reactive to a situation that could grow. Our current administration has been very heavy on intelligence and conversations, and that seems to really be at least giving us an opportunity to prepare. You're not going to stop it, but it is giving us a better chance to get in there and monitor, almost like a third hand principle, right?
mm.
There you go. FMA discussion
There you go.
where we
We finally tapped in FMA. Third hand principle. Wow. So, so if one gang, just by sheer numbers, is kind of the controlling entity, um, do they abuse it for their commerce, if you will?
in my experience, there's always going to be a bigger dog. And that bigger dog is going to have more control and say. That bigger dog will bend even their own rules to continue commerce.
Got it.
There you
There you go. Oh, understood. Again, I'll rephrase that question. If an inmate attacks a CEO successfully, do you find this encourages other inmates to do the same?
No,
No.
there is no, um, because of that commerce aspect. It does no one any good to attack an officer. If it's a personal grudge, if it's a mental health issue, it's mano a mano. We have not really had any multiple attacker scenarios that I'm aware of in Utah corrections in recent history, and I think a lot of that goes to our staff. A lot of credit goes to staff for that, but at the same time, the commerce of everything stops that from happening. The dollar tends to rule.
Okay.
Yeah, the dollar tends to rule.
There you go. Like, yeah, I can definitely see that. And yeah, being on lockdown and not being able to do anything, and I can't see them enjoying that. Yeah. Are you like inmates that are not linked up or don't politic, not part of an organization, lone wolves, if you will, who choose their are they can they do okay? Can you do your bid like that? I mean,
They're there, and there are some that are successful. Um, how they are able to do it, I can't answer. And not every offender is a gang member. Not every offender behind the walls is carrying a shank. And that's one of the really good saving graces that we have here in Utah, is that we recognize that, right? So we're not treating every offender and situation like this is, this is the end, this is serious. It is possible to go through, do your bid, and not have to link up, but it's the environment. You're always going to be looking over your shoulder.
if you're not affiliated.
Yeah, it's the nature of prey and predator. You're one of the two, and you can be various shades of each of those to fit what your journey is going to look like. But there's no true neutral. It's just impossible. In Andrew Hampton's full opinion.
No. I mean, no. I appreciate that. I mean, I mean, I just too bad. Like you can go in there and you just want to do your time and get the hell out of there, but yet you're going to be somewhat compelled to affiliate. You know, yeah. I mean, pending circumstances in that, and is there the ones who are getting preyed on that don't affiliate? Is there not much that can be done for them?
What do you do?
That's what I mean. I don't know. That's yeah. I'm not saying there is. Yeah.
We're not just going to release them because they've found themselves in a
No.
tough
Right.
spot.
No. Right. No. Understood. Right.
If you've incurred debt for illegal conduct,
gambling. Ooh.
I can't. Like, what do we do? If you end up in a situation where you've said some inappropriate things about someone's mother, what do we do? Right? There's close quarters, living in high energy environments that you cannot escape from. Someone is going to make a choice at some point that is going to lead to a negative consequence. How you handle that consequence dictates the rest of your time. Debt tends to be the highest driver, in my experience, for these negative events to happen. Whether it is use of contraband, the yearning for contraband, right? You know, what if you can afford Twinkies and I've got $0 to my name? Hey, dude, let me get a bite of that Twinkie. That'll be $20. All right, I got you next week. And then you can't get a hold of mom to send you $20. You owe that.
You're going to be paying one way or another, right?
I won't say that, but yes, there will be consequences.
And then gambling,
and hierarchy.
And the store's a little short. You know, the cupboard's a little bare. You make the call, but there's nothing coming in. Oh man!
And you've got nowhere to go. You're not running away. You're not moving to another city. Yeah.
And you're not checking in, right?
Well, then you're a punk, right?
Because you checked in, right? Wow.
And there's still consequences. Just because I moved across the yard doesn't mean that I'm untouchable.
Right, or you just got a pass, right? I mean,
it's like, oh man, he got away with my $20.
Nope. No. Word will travel fast, and
yeah.
Oh wow! What do you? Because man, I could talk to you all night about this, but I don't want to. This has been fascinating. It's been amazing. We're coming up on 2 hours. This is how enjoyable this has been. Like, what would you want? Okay, what are your go? Like, what changes you want to make that you can make, or that you can have some voice in there and do, like, without the red tape and bureaucracy and all that? Like, what do you want to do? And it sounds like you're doing some of it already.
Yeah. So if I had my druthers and my dream, it would be the opportunity for more training, because and specific targeted training, like I said, based on empirical data. We would love to be able to provide extracurricular quarterly activities where we're focusing on different aspects of defensive tactics. And we're actually working on developing those statewide for all of our state facilities in APMP, our probation and parole, and our DPO, our Division of Prison Operations. We have our in-service, which is 4 hours every year mandated, but we want to provide these opportunities, and I want to find a way to encourage those downtrodden souls that feel like they don't have the time to put a little bit more investment in themselves. So if I can be excited about it and I can bring about this change, maybe I can be contagious to at least one other person to get them in there.
Yeah.
The thing I leave my defensive tactics classes on and my edge weapons, it was like, I don't care if you do cardio kickboxing, taekwondo, Muay Thai, MMA, FMA, train something, do something. And if I had my way, it'd be department funded. I would fund martial arts classes for every employee that wanted it.
Yeah, right. I mean, wouldn't that be something? You know what I mean? Like actually fund it, like invest in your freaking employers, you know, our employees rather.
And our training division is really dedicated to that. It's just navigating what is truly feasible, not what is wanted, what is expected, but what is actually feasible within the constraints that we have to work in to really get the biggest bang for our buck back to the user.
Wow. Well, I hope, you know, here's the thing. It sounds like you've already made an impact. It sounds like you're going to continue to make an impact. So
I'm
I
trying.
commend you on that. And I think, you know, hopefully, you know, you'll be an example and hope maybe other states will find out about you, what you're doing. And hopefully some will follow suit, you know, on that. But,
Well, that's what
yeah,
I'm trying to do. I want our edge weapons program to be like the next example. I want to be able to take what we've got to other states, to other correctional facilities, and be like, this is what we've been able to apply, why it's this way. Here's our information. Use yours to build what works for you, but build something.
Yeah, I hope that works. I mean, again, I know we were talking about this, you know, and when you meet with Arnold or whatever, I mean, whatever I can do to help you with anything, man, you got it. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I got you. I sent you one download. I'm gonna send you another. The one was on that thing called Piper. So yeah, checked it out. If you got any questions, and Arnie or whatever, but I'll send you one on Blade Tech. So,
awesome.
Yeah, I just did. You'll see the defensive stuff. Yeah, no sweat, no sweat. But hey, pleasure. I hope this. Yeah, let's please stay. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah, you know what I mean, and one way or another through Arnie and all that. So, but well, I hope some of this comes, you know, light for, you know, come through what you're doing and what you're attempting. So again, I think it's awesome that you're just like you're getting success already. Like you're getting a program going. They're listening to you, and I think that's phenomenal. And if you can get to other states as well, and hope folks, you know, that better can defend themselves. God forbid. God, wouldn't that thing be a thing of beauty, huh? How wonderful.
Yeah, and I wish I could take full credit for it, but I have a great staff up there that I work with and who are very like-minded, man. And it's the answer is not always yes. And like sometimes that's also I'm like, hey, this is what I want to add and see, and they're like, yeah, well, that's not going to happen. And it's truly in the better interest. We have a training division that is really, really pushing to improve our officers' training. And I'm truly grateful for them for the opportunity in helping me create this and to be able to push it forward and be a part of it.
That's awesome. Well, best to you, brother, on this. I think I have a feeling you're gonna get there. You just seem really motivated and determined. And sometimes that's all it takes, man. You know, and so I see that in you. So I think good things are going to come out of this for you. But hey, it was great talking to you. And yeah, I'll send you that one. If you got any questions on the first download, let me know.
Awesome. Sounds good, sir.
All right, Andrew. You take care.
You as well.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right, folks. That's who is next. Renee's supposed to get back to me. He's currently in Spain on a Euro Dog Brothers, and that could be Friday, but I have not heard from him, so I'm not sure. But if nothing happens with him, Blade, we got be an episode on the Blade show coming up with myself, Bill McGrath, Brian Canana, and possibly 2 others on the seminar, as well as the Blade show. Piper guest, Tim Hartman on school and something else. Brian Canada theme episode. Brian Z, Roundtable Modern Niece. We're going to get his lens on the art within the art, some of the misconceptions going on there. Yeah, so that's possibly this, hopefully this Friday I hear from Renee. If not, Ben Myers, Monday, 27th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. 27th, yeah. Anyway, yeah, thanks for jumping in, watching. That was a good one. I really enjoyed that talk. Wow. All right, folks, we'll see you next time.